4-point star block has 2 colors that make up the star. Your quarter square triangle is the center, so you have to do the 2 colors of your points. So one's light and one's dark. So that's my H is my dark and my light is my F. And what you're going to do is you're going to take one of them, draw a line from corner to corner, put it on here, pin it, pin it this way, and you're going to sew a 1/4 of an inch on each side of the drawn line. I'm going to cut it apart on the drawn line, and then I'm going to press towards my dark fabric. Here they are. Now what you're going to do is you're going to draw another line on the back of one of these. These are now half square triangles, but we're going to sew them into 1/4 square triangles. I think we did this in week, was it week 3 maybe? So this should just be review. And I want to nest these, and I want the outsides to be lined up. I want a nice sharp point in there. So then when you sew it and you open it up, always check it before you sew it. See, I did it wrong. So oh, actually I did it right. I thought I did it wrong. Okay, here we go. Let's do it again. As I said, make sure you check it. And when you open it up, boy, well, you're going to sew it from here to here. So when you open it up, you're going to get this, which will look like this when it's trimmed down. And what it does is it just lines up in the center of your block. Let me go sew this. So I sewed it together, and I'm going to cut it apart here. And then I'm just going to go press it. I will press the seams open. So here it is. And we're going to trim this down to, I believe it's 2.5. Yeah, 2.5. So again, when I trim these down, I'm going to line up my 45 degrees. And I have 2.5 here and 2.5 here on the seam, and it's on the 45 degree. I want to make sure that there's enough fabric in that 2.5 so that I don't trim it too small. I'm going to turn it around, and then I'm going to trim it down to 2.5. Okay, and we have the center of our block. So I've already made these 2. I'm going to show you how to make the other 2, because once you've done it once, you know how to do it. So right now I have my A and my G's. And one thing I want to talk about the rectangle triangle is that it's not like your half square triangle. It has to be offset just a little bit. And you're going to just follow through with the pictures, and you'll understand what I'm saying. So what you're going to do is you're going to draw a line from the left corner to the down to the bottom right corner on A. This is going to make one side of your half rect triangle. And then what you're going to do is you're going to lay it like this and like this. Okay? And then you're going to sew a 1/4 of an inch on each side. Just like you do with the half square rectangle, it's the trimming where things get a little tricky. Here it is. Now I'm going to cut it apart. Right on the line. And then I'm going to press this towards the dark. That way I get my seams opposing when I sew the other half, because these right here are both, if you turn it this way and you look at the block, they are both left side. So now we have to make the right side. So I'll press these towards the dark. I'm going to do it all at once. No, maybe I'll do it now. So I made some markings on my ruler here that will help you out quite a bit. Is I've taken my glow tape, this tape, and I've marked 2.5 by 1.5 because that's going to be the finished sides of my rectangle. This not only will help you with trimming, but it'll help you make sure you have enough fabric underneath your ruler. And I've also marked with a marker or 1/4 inch here, and I marked a dot at 1.5 and 2.5, and that's called out on the pattern. And this is to help you line everything up that you need to line up. So I marked both sides because we're going to have a left and a right. And so what I'm going to do now is I am going to I want to make sure that I have fabric all underneath here, all inside of my tape. And what I'm going to do is I line the dot up. I'm going to zoom in. It's a dark fabric, so it's a little bit hard to see, but I'm going to move the dots over to the light. Do you see the dots on my ruler? I have one here and one here. This does come off with fingernail polish remover or anything like that. It will come off. So I want it 1/4 inch mark here, 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch, and then this ruler has the 1/2 inch. That's why it looks a little different, but it works, and you don't have to buy any special ruler to make your half rectangle square. So I have fabric all underneath my tape. Both of my dots are lined up on the seam, and I'm going to trim. Then I'm going to turn it around, and I have the size of my block marked right here. Sometimes I put my tape just on the left because I want to see where my line is. And then you're going to think this is wrong because you have this little hangy outy thing right here, but this is what you want to see. That's what's going to give you a nice 1/4 inch seam. I know it feels weird, but it is right. And I'm just going to move it over just a tad. Okay, so here's one. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to line it up. I'm going to move it up so you can see it. Dot and dot. And make sure you have fabric underneath all of your ruler all the way around. And we're going to trim it right and left. And then we're going to turn it around. And we're going to trim it up to 1.5 by 2.5. Just like in the pattern. And we have the 2 lefts. Now we're going to do the 2 rights, and it's the same thing except for I'm going to turn my ruler around. I'm going to come out. Hold on. I'm going to bring my ruler out, and I'm going to use the other side of my ruler. So let's do the same thing. Make sure I have this. And I need a background, which I thought I had cut. Here's one. So instead of drawing the line, I'll show you on the instructions. Okay, so on the other side, we're going to draw the line from the top right to the bottom left. And we're going to do the same thing. We're gonna put these together and put your fabrics just like the pattern says. Because what this is gonna give you is the other side of your rectangle so they can go together. Of course, that one's trimmed, this one isn't. So I went ahead and cut them apart, and then I pressed towards the background because when these get sewn together, your seams right here will nest together. So the first one towards the dark, the second one towards the background. So if you're getting confused about which way to cut first, you know if you stick it like this, right, it's not going to cut right. So just use the other side of your ruler and make sure again that you have fabric underneath your ruler. And I'm lining up this intersection and that intersection that I marked with my marker. I'm going to turn it around now that I have two sides that are squared up, rectangled up. And then I'm going to trim here. These are cut a little smaller because I know how to do it, but in the instructions, yours are going to be cut just a tad larger to give you a little extra fabric. So again, I'm going to line it up here, and I have the dot on the seam. I have the dot on the seam there, making sure all of my block is covered. Turn it around, trim the other two sides. Okay, so now we have a left and a right, and I'm just going to sew them together. They'll nest nicely, and you're supposed to have that little hanging outy thing right there. It's about 1/16 to probably about 1/8 of an inch, and that's what will give you your nice 1/4 inch seam. Same here. I'm going to nest them, slide it down just a little bit, and then I'm going to come here, nest it, and then I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch seam right here. So here we are. We have our two half rectangle squares put together to make a diamond. If you sew it to this, you make a kite. So it's a very useful block. Now that you know how to make it, you're going to see it in a lot of patterns. Now I have to make the lighter side. So I'm going to do the same thing with my fabrics, and I will do it again with you so you have a pretty good handle on how to do it. So again, we're going to follow the instructions for the first side. Set this aside, and I'm going to, maybe I'll do them both together so that way you can see the difference. On one side I'm going to draw my line like this and line up corner to corner, pin it, then on the next side you're going to draw your line. I'm just checking my directions, making sure they're right. I'm going to show you what it says. And as you draw your line from here to here, the top right to the bottom left, do it on your background again. Oops. Do it on the right side of the square. And then you're going to take your fabric and you're going to put your, turn it like this. And then what I do is, to make it easier on me, is I lay this down straight up and down because then I turn the top. The pattern shows it turning the bottom. You could do either or. It just looks just like this if you turn the bottom. I think it just depends on how your head looks at it. So I'm going to sew both of these on both sides of the seam. I have my two sides. You can see how they're different. Can you see that? I'll zoom in just a little bit. Okay. Trim them apart on the line. And I'm going to go and I'm going to press one side towards the dark and these two I'll press towards the dark and these two I will press towards the light. So here they are. Now I have to trim them, and we're going to get my other ruler that's all marked, and I'm going to see, this one is the size you're going to use. See how much extra you have. If you noticed last time that I was really a little bit short on fabric, so I want to line up my dots and make sure I have fabric underneath that tape. Turn it around and cut a bit more waste, but it will help you in the long run. Okay, those two right here. I'm going to trim the other side. And this is where I'm going to use my other side of my ruler. I think this is the trick that has helped me the most, is just using both sides of the ruler, because my brain just didn't turn around like it should. So I found this to help me the most. I hope you find it helpful too. Slipped a little bit. If you have a hard time trimming from that angle, you can just turn it all around. Get a table that turns, rotating mat, and that will help you a ton. So you can actually use the right side when you turn it around. Oh, you can't. You have to use the left side. Okay, we're going to trim it down to hold on. Right here. Okay. And again, we're going to have left and a right, and a left and a right, and we're going to sew them together. Of course, I didn't press the way I said I was going to. So I'm just going to flip my seam over. You can also press your seams open if you find that easier. Some people do. Gotta go replace that battery. Pin, and then I'm gonna go sew it. Okay, and now we have everything sewn together. I sewed these together first because I find it easier for me. And the instructions have you do that as well. And then you're going to sew your B to this section and this section here. You know, just mine's directional. I have them all going the same way. I'm going to sew my B to here and here. Essentially, you sew these three, and then you sew them all together. And then you're going to go and put your sashings on, top and bottom. So let me go do that real quick. So here is my block center, and then I'm going to sew the top and bottom sashing in the left and the right. This is what it looks like on the back. That one probably should have went that way, but it didn't. I did end up pressing these seams towards here because these blocks have nothing in them, so I wanted to get them away from the center. I could have pressed them open, but I chose not to because I do have these blank blocks out here. So I'll sew the top and the bottom, and then the left and the right. And here's my block. I'm probably going to trim it up just a tad to get some of the strings off of it on this end. And there you have it. You guys have learned how to do half rectangle blocks now. So let's say you don't want a seam here and you want to fussy cut a whole triangle. What we would use is, we would use this ruler called the 2 Peaks in 1 ruler by Creative Grids. I'm going to come out a little bit because it's pretty big. And you can see that it has this odd shape hanging down on the bottom. That's so you don't lose it. I know I've had a couple of triangle and a square rulers where I'm always losing one half of the ruler and I can't find it. So I like that this is connected, and you definitely aren't going to lose this. So like all Flying Geese rulers, on the right side it tells you the finished size in the black circles, and on the left side it tells you what size strip to cut. So this side is used to cut the triangle like I did in this, just like this. And then this side is used to cut your setting strips. Well, you cut 2 at once like this, just like that. So when you cut these out, you put your fabric right sides together, and you cut one for the right and one for the left side. Okay, so let me show you an example of fussy cutting. When you use this ruler, you cut the strip. I cut it 2.5 inches, and you can cut like this. Some people may need to use a rotating mat. I'm okay just flipping it. And you line this up at the 2.5. This is a 2.5 inch strip, and I'm gonna cut this one. So, and you just keep going all the way around. I am gonna change this blade. Okay, but it's not really the look I wanted. I wanted to kind of get this down at the bottom of my ruler each time. So what I want to do is I am going to find the center. It's easy to find the center on this, and I'm going to cut one side and then the other side, and there's one. And if you're not sure, you know, you can place it there, but we obviously don't have enough room because I went and cut these. And then the next strip you would cut would be this one, and of course I still don't have enough room because I cut. But you can see where I'm lining it up exactly where I lined it up before, and I wanted this in the center. I'm going to go ahead and cut this even though it's not big enough. And what you get is you would have kind of like a kaleidoscope effect going around your block with this in the center. So I'm going to quickly show you how to see how that looks. It's really cute where they're all the same. So I just stopped and went ahead and cut another strip because this is looking pretty cute. And I'm going to line my 2-inch mark. I'm centering this. I don't know if you can see this little circle here. Come down. Okay. Right in the center of the peak, because this is my stitching line. So everything inside of the stitching line is going to show up. And then I'm going to come over and I'm going to find the next one that I can cut. And again, I have the heart in the circle there and that in the stitching line right there. And I have 2, but you can see how much you waste doing it like this. But anyway, I think you get the point. Then what you need to do for your triangles, you're going to have 4 of them. Where's my 4th one? Let me just cut a 4th one. This one's the red. That cute. That's a little gingerbread man. So I have 4, and now I need to cut the sides right here. I have quite a few of these now. So what you do is you take and you put your fabrics together, your strip. I cut a 2.5-inch strip, and I'm going to square up this left edge really quick like. Because I need a straight edge. I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to line up this left edge here with the edge of my straight edge. I'm going to cut it. Pull this away. I'm going to cut the little corner. This helps you line everything up. And then this ruler has what's called a baseline. And you're going to take the baseline and you're going to slide it up. And you're going to put it on the bottom, line it up on the bottom of your triangle. And you're just going to cut off the corners. And that's 2 mirror images of each other. Then I'm going to cut this next one. I flipped my ruler over and I already have my angle from the last one I cut. I'm going to cut the corner off. I'm going to slide down my baseline right here and I'm going to cut this off. And I'm going to cut, that doesn't look too square. Maybe it's okay. It's okay. Line this one up on the left. Trim it. Trim off the corner. And slide up the baseline here. And then we have one more. What am I doing? Sorry, guys. I want my ruler like this. Okay. I'm going to trim it. And slide down for the baseline. You could also use your corner clipper for this baseline if you want. Same thing. Okay, so now what I have is, if you open these up, sometimes it's easy to turn these the wrong way, but you open them up and this is what you have. Oh, I don't want to use that one. Make sure your right side's up. And 2 more. Okay, So all 4 of them are here. And then we sew them together just like we did with the one that was, had the seam in the middle, the triangle, rectangle. So you would just line this up. This is already cut for you. And you would line this up down here. You would pin it and you would sew 1/4 inch. So I've sewn one side on, and this one I sewed the right side on because I had the fabric upside down when I went to the sewing machine. So now I'm just going to flip this over, and I'm going to line up the bottoms and the top, and I'm going to sew 1/4 inch seam. So here they are, no seam in the center, and you can do any type of fussy cutting you want. This ruler is also good for making lots of other things, star blocks and storm at sea blocks. So it's not one of those rulers you'll buy and use once. You'll have lots of opportunity to use it. Next, we're going to make the 1/4 square triangle that goes in the middle. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a line on the wrong side from corner to corner. Oops, I want to draw that a little nicer. And I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew 1/4 inch on both sides, just like we did, I think it was week 2. I showed you how to do 1/4 square triangles. So I pressed towards my red. Now on one of these, I'm going to draw a line corner to corner across the seam. Then we're going to put these so that the reds are on opposite sides. So when you open it up, it looks like this. And we're going to nest these together. And we're going to pin on each side, and we're going to sew 1/4 inch on that side of the line. Before you go to the sewing machine, I want you to open this up and check it and make sure that you sew the right way, because if you sew the other way, you'll just get the same thing. So there you go. So I'm going to go sew this. And what I've done is I've pressed my seams open, because this center block here, this little place where they come together, can make a pretty big bump for your long arm quilter or your domestic machine and could break a needle. So you can either press it open or you can do the little, some people do the twisty thing where they twist it open like this and they iron it flat. It's your choice. Well, we have 2 and we only need 1 unless you're making all of your blocks the same. So here's my block. I went and grabbed my 2.5 inch ruler because I wanted to show you something. I'm going to zoom in here. So on this ruler, it tells you there's a little crosshairs where the center, I guess I would help if I put it here, a piece of paper behind it. It shows you the crosshairs in the white where the center is of 2.5, which is 1 1/4. So if you trim up your block with the ruler, you just line it up on the 2.5. The corner of the ruler goes on the seam. The corner of this side goes on the seam. And then your 45-degree line is lined up. And you will come out with a perfect 2.5 inch 1/4 square triangle. If you don't have this ruler, all you have to do is find that 1/4 inch spot on your square. I do recommend you use a square, but you don't have to. So on here, I would just find my 1 1/4, which is right here. I still line it up on my 45-degree line. Scoot up just a tad. And then I want to make sure the 2.5 inch line is right there on my seam on both sides. And there's 2.5 inches of fabric underneath here before I cut. We can turn the whole thing around. really like this little pad, little cutting mat. Of course I do. Line it back up and cut the top. So there's my perfect quarter square triangle. And I'm going to put it here. It's the center. And this is going to go here, here, and here, and here. Pretty cute, huh? So now I'm going to lay in my center strips. So you can put it here and you can see what it's going to look like. My corner squares. And there's my center. I wanted to go with a little lighter green in the center, but I think that's very pretty. It would be prettier if I had all of these in the same spot. I still have one that's not right. I may redo that one. And here are my blocks. This is my fussy cut one. I have two this way and two that way. Still kind of cute, huh? Imagine if I had done them all the same though. I would have had this kind of ring going around here. Here's my half rectangle triangle. And here's my other one. And this one I'm not going to use because I didn't like this center section. So you guys, I hope you had fun and I will see you next week. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. And if you have any questions, please post them below and I'll be sure to answer them.